Hello, my name is Zoe Elfenbein, and I will be discussing the active role that both media and propaganda played during the Second Red Scare in the mid-20th century. The Second Red Scare, which took place from 1947 to 1957, refers to a period during which fear and hysteria swept over the United States as citizens felt extremely threatened by the perils of communism. The Red Scare is termed as such because the Soviet flag was red and thus became a symbolic color during this time. During the Cold War era, feelings of anxiety pervaded the nation as various political figures and federal employees were accused of being communists. Aspects of the media and use of propaganda amplified anti-communist feelings in the U.S. and shaped perceptions of the Eastern enemy, resulting in a high degree of xenophobia. In order to understand the period during which the Second Red Scare emerged, it is important to first understand key historical events that laid the foundation for the onset of the era. Although World War II had officially ended in 1945, ongoing political and military conflict between Western and Eastern superpowers plagued the decades that followed. Beginning in the late 1940s, deep-rooted tensions between the United States and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics remained unresolved. Although the United States and the Soviet Union fought alongside each other in World War II against the Axis powers, America had been skeptical regarding the Soviets' use of communism and became suspicious of leaders like Joseph Stalin, who governed in an authoritative manner. On the other side, the Soviets begrudged Americans not only for their refusal to recognize the Soviet Union as part of the international community, but they also resented the United States for their delayed entry into World War II, which led to an immense number of Russian casualties. Tensions continued to rise as the Soviet Union engaged in relentless expansionism into areas of Eastern Europe. The United States attempted to counteract these expansionist strategies through a policy known as containment. The containment plan resulted in the desire to build up arms capacity as a way to use military force against the spread of communism and the Soviet Union. The arms race created the looming threat of nuclear destruction at any point in time, which led apprehensive Americans to build bomb shelters and practice drills in public places. Renowned American historian Richard Hofstadter argues in his article on the paranoid style of American politics that what is at stake is always a conflict between absolute good and absolute evil. Through this paranoid lens, enemies are thought of as being totally evil and therefore they must be totally eliminated, according to Hofstadter. In this light, communists were viewed as enemies that needed to be rooted from society. Through different outlets of the media, propaganda methods were used to instill a sense of fear and hatred for communist nations and rally American support of the Cold War. Through the mass consumption of posters, comics, magazines, books, newspapers, films, television programs, and more, Americans were increasingly persuaded to jump on the anti-communist bandwagon. In 1947, a comic book was published that featured the Is This Tomorrow image. The depiction of violence in the image is used to associate communists as a dangerous force. The image portrays characters suffering from physical violence and agony to emphasize that under communist rule, violence and death would ensue. In 1951, Bauman Gum Incorporated distributed a bubblegum card featuring the leader of the Chinese Communists, Mao Tse-tung. Many argue that the green coloration of Mao's face signifies communist greed. Mao's slight smile marks his content and satisfaction with being a communist. The green coloring of his face also associates Chinese communists as being aliens who are far from human. Another comic book published in 1954 featured the idealized superhero Captain America. On this cover, Captain America sports a red, white, and blue suit with a star, alluding to the American flag, which serves as a symbol for freedom, pride, and victory. The comic book hero is also holding a shield, which represents protection against enemies and altogether serves as a metaphor for the power of America's military establishment. Film was also used as a method of propaganda to instill feelings of anti-communism. In 1956, Invasion of the Body Snatchers was released. This science fiction film featured a small town infiltrated by outer space pods that replaced human beings. Although a seemingly outlandish plot, the movie served as an allegory for the growing threat of communism and framed Russia to seem as foreign as possible. A key figure during the Red Scare who actively sought to expose any citizens who were loyal to the communist cause was Wisconsin Senator Joseph P. McCarthy. During this era that became known as McCarthyism, 2,000 government employees lost their jobs as a result of accusations and investigations. In addition to government posts, McCarthyism also seeped into other areas of employment. After condemning the actions of the investigative committee in the U.S. House of Representatives, 10 renowned members of the Hollywood film industry were arrested, sentenced to jail, and banned from working in any major studios. These 10 figures became known as the Hollywood Blacklist. Senator McCarthy's intense yet successful allegations became so daunting that few people even objected to his means of exposing communists. The fear and anxiety afflicting the nation had exacerbated to a point where public officials and citizens wanted to publicly announce their condemnation of communism and appear completely transparent in front of the country. This is where television comes in. Broadcasters and public officials developed a mutually dependent relationship in which each party sought legitimacy through the other. This relationship was considered mutually dependent because both parties could potentially receive immunity from communist accusations. Public officials sought airtime on broadcast television programs as a way to emphasize their loyalty to the American audience, while television stations exercised democratic freedoms as they held government officials accountable, which ultimately circles back to the original watchdog role of the media. In conclusion, from 1947 to 1957, America experienced a decade characterized by trepidation, anxiety, and paranoia. The Red Scare itself would not have occurred without the use of propaganda campaigns, which framed communism as a threatening force and caused Americans to fear anyone or anything associated with the movement. Thanks a lot for listening, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.